An outstanding radio journalist will soon sit down by the microphone for the last time. Ted Blades, the host of On the Go, is about to retire. His last show is tomorrow. Now, he's been hosting the afternoon, evening radio drive home show for CBC Radio in this province for 18 years. His CBC career spans more than 3 decades, and most of that with On the Go. Well, I met up with Ted in Radio Studio A, just down the hall from Here and Now, and I started by asking Ted what led to his big decision.
Well, in September, I passed 2 milestones. I passed 18 years hosting On the Go and 35 years full-time with the company, and it just seemed time. I've been at it a long time. I enjoy it. I still enjoy it. I'm going to miss it when I go, but it seemed time. The last year and a half since the pandemic started, we haven't had a guest in the studio. We haven't had a band or a musician in the studio, and that's not going to change for the next year. And I was like, do I stay around for that till things return to whatever the new normal is? Or do I go? And I said, you know what? I can go. I'm going to go.
You know, that almost 2 decades in the same chair, and you know, it wasn't just in this studio, but also in the old shop on Duckworth. I could waste a question by asking about highlights, but let me ask you a general question. What is it that you've really enjoyed about hosting On the Go and radio? Because radio's got a kind of warmth. As great as television is, there's certain warmth to radio that I think you're an old radio guy. What really made you happy doing this job?
2 things. I like the intimacy of radio, the fact that it's one-on-one between me and the listener, between me and the guest. It's a one-on-one conversation. Even when there's a panel, it seems to be more personal that way. But the thing that I think I'm proudest of about radio is those times when we've been on the air when the listeners needed us most. I think of Dark NL, Hurricanes Leslie and Igor, and Snowmageddon just last year. We were on the air for hours at a time. During Dark NL, I did a 12-hour stretch here on the radio. Just keeping people together, giving them the information they need, making connections. I remember during Dark NL, there was a woman in Portugal Cove who was trapped in her house. We talked to her on the phone. People came and rescued her. There was a guy during that time as well that was running out of oxygen. He was on an oxygen tank. We were able to hook him up with someone who could help him. That kind of public broadcasting, not emergency services, though those were emergencies, but vital services. For me, those were some of the most precious memories I'll have of the place.
On the lighter side, though, radio also offers times for all kinds of fun and humor and positive emotions. When you look back across what must be thousands of interviews, any funny moments or the funniest moments you think of that actually stand out in your mind as, okay, that's a keeper, even if it was a blooper, Ted?
The cheeky answer is the highlight of my career was on October the 17th, 3 years ago, the day that cannabis was legalized in this country. I was looking down through our Twitter feed, keeping an eye on the headlines as they come through, and up comes a notice from the Dominion store in Gander or Grand Falls, Windsor, the Dominion store in Grand Falls, Windsor. And I went on the air and I said, you know what? I never thought I'd say this on the radio, but the Dominion in Grand Falls is out of dope. But if we want to talk about listener-generated humor, I think my favorite moment was an interview I did years ago with a farmer on the west coast of the island who'd had his crop of turnips stolen. He'd harvest them. They were in bags. He was going to pick them up that day. He came back to the field and they were gone. I asked him if there was any way to track them. And without missing a beat, he goes, well, it's not like turnips have fingerprints now, is it?
These marvelous moments. So let me ask you this as you get ready for your final show tomorrow. Do you think that those of us in this business have an unfair advantage in Newfoundland and Labrador in terms of going to interview people, as far as getting people to open up and be colorful and be warm? Because I talk to some of my friends who work in other parts of Canada, and some days they say, oh, it's really hard to get people to talk. I've never really felt that same barrier here.
The CBC asked me to write a column for our website on my years here, and that was one of the things that I said in there is that whatever meager skills I brought to the table, a great deal of the success I've had in radio comes from the fact that I decided to have a career here in Newfoundland and Labrador. in the middle of it all, my wife and I moved to BC for 3 years. We came back, and I'm listening to the radio, and the stories here are simply better. They're the same stories we heard out in British Columbia. Person A is mad at government or organization B for reason C, but they were better interviews. They were better interviews, better stories. And the reason is because people here aren't shy. They're passionate. They're colorful in their language. It does make better radio. We do have an advantage here that our colleagues in the rest of the CBC don't, and lucky us.
All right, Ted, we'll listen to you and Catherine, your family. All the best, and congratulations.
Thank you kindly.
We'll have to use some hand sanitizer now, but I'm not letting you go without a handshake.
This time next week, I'll be like every other CBC listener. I'll be at home yelling at the radio.